Hello there, and welcome back to this gentle journey through the quiet universe. Before we begin, let the breath soften. Let the day fold itself away. Whether you are lying in the hush of evening or drifting in a quiet morning, let every sound move farther out, leaving only stillness close to you. Imagine a horizon where the stars are scattered like dust on a dark velvet. A faint red glow rests far away, steady and calm, like an ember waiting in the night. Around you, silence lingers like a soft ocean, and the darkness shimmers with a patient light. Why is it so difficult to get to Mars? It is not one leap, but a slow unfolding a path drawn across distance, time, and silence. The way to Mars is not a straight line, but a drifting tide that asks for patience, for endurance, for quiet strength. What if the journey is shaped less by the planet itself and more by the vast, invisible space in between? What if the emptiness is not empty at all, but alive with quiet tests for every traveler who dares to cross it? And where are you listening from now? A dim room, a warm blanket, a rainy window? Wherever you are, we share this same sky, and in this moment, the same wondering. If slow wanderings like this bring you ease, stay a little longer. No rush, no demand, only a soft place beside this glow. So let your thoughts fall into the rhythm of drifting starlight, and we will begin our gentle walk through the story of Mars, not in haste, but as if carried by a tide that always knows its way. And now, as thought drifts forward, like a tide without shore, it comes to rest upon a single glow, a small light folded into the dark. For as long as memory has stretched, Mars has shimmered as a red star, faint, yet certain, glimmering like a coal left glowing on the velvet of night. To eyes that gazed upward before glass and lenses revealed more, it was not a world of stone and dust, but a wandering ember. Unlike the still stars that held their places, its pale flame stirred the quiet of imagination, as if the sky itself carried a hidden breath of fire across the dark. And so, in every age, people lifted their gaze and drifted into wonder. The Romans gave it to their god of war, yet even that fierce name set against the hush of evening feels softened more like a murmur carried on the wind than a shout across the heavens. To the Greeks, it was Ares, to the Babylonians, Nergal, each people weaving the same glow into different threads of meaning, turning the red shimmer into a sign of something larger than the night. These were not measures or proofs, but gentle metaphors born from the way human hearts answered the vastness above. In truth, Mars is not a star, but a planet, a sphere of stone circling the sun, with patient steps as Earth does. Yet from afar, its valleys and deserts are unseen, its mountains veiled, its storms invisible. It offers only a steady glimmer, drifting softly across the constellations, neither hurried nor explained. In that simplicity rests its quiet strength, to draw the gaze without demand, to lift curiosity like a tide that rises without sound. Through countless nights, this red spark marked the rhythm of time. Farmers traced its rising, and its fading priests sought omens in its glow. Travelers found it among the constellations and felt at once steadied and unsettled. Yet beyond all ritual, beyond all fear, there was always the soft wonder. How could such a small light hold such weight? How could it speak without voice? How could it remind the human heart that the universe has no edge? In the stillness, Mars was not stranger, but companion, a silent witness to uncounted dreams. When glass turned to mirrors and telescopes reached farther, the mystery did not vanish. It only changed its phase. Mars was seen as a world with mountains taller than Earth's, storms wide, as continents' plains spread in silence. Yet, even as knowledge gathered, the glow itself remained, as it had always been a sign of distance, of otherness, of stories still waiting to unfold. Not only numbers and orbits, but an image soft and unspoken, reminding that wonder is never fully explained. To look at Mars even now is to hold both myth and measure together the fire that ancient voices named divine and the stone that science describes with patient detail. It wears both masks, gently resting in the night, not as a question to be solved, but as a reminder of how thought itself can drift. It is the red lamp that has watched generations close their eyes, whispering that the universe is wide and that to wonder is as natural as to sleep. And so, Mars remains not merely a destination, nor only a task to be achieved. It lingers as a symbol carried lightly through the dark, a spark of curiosity itself, inviting the mind to wander not in haste, but in the unhurried rhythm of wonder. And as the glow of Mars lingers softly in the sky, thought drifts like a tide toward the quiet dream it awakens in human hearts. For countless nights, eyes have lifted upward to that small red spark, and though no foot has ever touched its soil, gentle machines have gone before us, fragile emissaries, moving in silence. Probes have circled, rovers have traced faint lines across dust, each one like a patient whisper upon a surface no hand has known. These journeys have not been loud nor hurried, but steady, as though Earth itself were stretching out a careful hand to greet a distant neighbor. The moon was once the farthest step, a glowing stone close enough to walk upon, to stand and look back at Earth, as if gazing from the rim of a quiet bowl. But beyond that, near companion, lies another horizon, one that has called more softly, more deeply, carrying the sense of a second home waiting across the dark. The dream of Mars is not one of conquest nor of haste, but of standing where no one has stood, of breathing the silence of a new world, of listening to the hush beneath a different sky. This longing does not burn quickly, nor strike sharply. It unfolds like a slow thread through generations, like a song remembered only in fragments, hummed again when the night is clear. People picture the red deserts stretching under pale sunlight. Imagine thin winds moving across rocks untouched by rivers. Dream of two moons rising where only one has ever watched their sleep. These visions carry no urgency, no demand. They drift like seeds upon a wind, finding quiet rest in the soil of imagination. Every step toward Mars has begun with stillness, a telescope, a sketch, a photograph, a signal carried across the dark. And always, the desire has been more than to look. It has been to cross the distance itself, to turn the unknown into something touched, something felt. And so, the dream has grown, not with shouts, but with whispers repeated softly until they become part of the quiet rhythm of human thought. There is something tender in this dream, for it does not arise only from need, but from wonder. To go beyond the moon is to prove that distance is not a wall, but a horizon, shifting gently closer when approached. To reach another planet is to carry the idea of home into the sky, to set it lightly upon another shore. This is why the dream continues, even when the path is long, even when the way feels heavy. Mars waits with patience, glowing quietly as it has for ages, asking for nothing, giving only its steady light. Humanity answers not with haste, but with hope, sending small machines like footprints in the dark, preparing slowly for the day when breath itself may join the silent winds. And in this way, the dream is not only about Mars, but about the nature of longing itself, the soft pull to wander, to cross, to arrive. And so, thought comes to rest here, in the calm truth that the dream of Mars is never sudden, never fierce, but wide and unhurried, flowing like a quiet river through time, carrying within it the gentle rhythm of curiosity that has always lived in the human heart. And from the dream of reaching another world, the mind drifts like a feather toward the quiet space that lies in between, where distance itself becomes part of the tale. The stretch from Earth to Mars is never a fixed line across the dark, but a shifting span changing as the two worlds circle the sun. Earth turns gently in its orbit. Mars moves in its wider loop, and the two never rest like dancers, circling the same center, yet never stepping together for long. Sometimes they lean closer, sometimes they drift apart, always breathing in the rhythm of celestial cycles. The journey is not a number, but an interval that swells and fades like the slow pulse of time itself. To imagine this movement is to picture two small boats upon a silent sea, each following its own current, never halting, never rushing, simply circling under unseen tides. At moments, the boats drift nearer, close enough that one could almost whisper across the water. At moments they part, carried gently by streams unseen. The crossing is easiest when they meet, yet still it asks for patience, for the waters in between are never still. This is why the path to Mars cannot be taken at any instant, but only when the cycles of the heavens open a door. The chance arrives like a season, not too soon, not too late, simply as part of the sky's unfolding rhythm. To travel, then, is to step through a doorway, left ajar open only for a breath of time, before it closes again, leaving the long, quiet wait for its return. Timing is not a wall, but a reminder that the cosmos moves with its own softness, asking us to move with it, never against it. And so, the distance is not measured only in miles, but in patience and waiting, in the gentle endurance of letting the path ripen in its own hour. To reach Mars is not a leap, but a drift, a long glide through stillness carried by orbits like hidden currents in an invisible ocean. The spacecraft does not cut straight across the gap, but bends its path like a leaf, moving with the wind, curving with the gravity of the sun, letting natural motion cradle it onward. This voyage, stretched across months, is less a dash than a breathing. Each day is a ripple upon the sea each week, a tide pulling softly forward each month, a horizon inching closer. The distance is not broken in an instant, but eased away in countless small steps, each as light as a heartbeat. To imagine the crossing is to imagine a candle drifting in the night, its flame steady, its pace unhurried, its destination approaching with quiet grace. Thus, the space between Earth and Mars is not empty, not still, but alive with gentle rhythm. It is a span that teaches patience, a span that whispers of cycles older than human time, a span that must be welcomed rather than resisted. To walk such a path is to agree with slowness, to let distance unfold in its own measure, to accept that this unfolding is itself the journey. And when thought comes to rest here, the truth feels tender. To reach Mars is not a single stride through shadow, but a voyage upon quiet tides, a drift between worlds that shows how distance itself can be vast and yet soft. Beyond the long measure of distance, there opens a gentler realm where silence itself becomes the landscape. In that expanse, there is no air, no cloud, no rustle of leaves or waves, only the stillness of a void that does not echo. Silence. There is not an absence, but a presence thick and unbroken, like a dark sea resting perfectly calm beneath an endless night. The stars glow without tremble, light moves without reply, and every surface exposed to this quiet is touched only by the clear, unblinking gaze of emptiness. To imagine it is to imagine standing in a place where even a whisper dissolves before it is born, fading into nothing like mist at dawn. Through this sea, a vessel moves with patience, small and fragile, yet unwavering, like a leaf drifting upon invisible waters. Its engines press softly, not against air, not against waves, but into the pure geometry of motion itself, guiding the craft along a path carved through nothingness. No current pulls it back, no breeze carries it forward, only momentum unfolding steady and sure, like breath in the dark. It does not race. It glides with intention, held gently in a silence that seems without end. In that vastness, the ship becomes more than metal and wire. It is a quiet pilgrim, bearing within it a trace of earth, a memory of wind, of rivers, of voices, now hushed. Around it lies no shelter, no harbor, no resting island, only the long stretch of distance that opens ever farther. It survives on what it carries: air, enclosed warmth, gathered light, kindled from within, like a lantern held aloft in a night without dawn. Each pulse of energy is a heartbeat, each cycle of its systems, a quiet rhythm keeping life where otherwise nothing would stir. The perils of this sea are not loud, not sudden, but constant, woven into the fabric of the void. The cold is endless, not winter's chill, but the deeper absence of all warmth. The light of the sun still reaches, yet stretched thin, fragile as a candle flame asked to warm a cavern. The emptiness presses in, not with weight, but with absence hollow and boundless, as if it could swallow any small spark without notice. And yet, across this immensity, the spacecraft drifts on its path, fragile, yet enduring its strength, drawn not from force, but from persistence. Each step toward Mars is measured not in leaps, but in patience, for readiness is not a moment, but a condition renewed again and again, hour by hour, day by day. Instruments checked, directions, traced, systems balanced in their delicate dance. The silence does not punish, nor does it forgive. It simply waits unchanging while the traveler continues. In this way, the journey is not an assault against distance, but a meditation upon continuity, the long unfolding of effort across the stillness of space. Seen in this light, the voyage is not struggle, but surrender, not conquest, but quiet persistence. The ship floats as a leaf does, fragile, yet guided, carried not by storm, but by intention. Within its hull, a story is told in heartbeats of machinery, in the muted pulse of human hope. And though the silence around it stretches endlessly, within that silence lies a strange kind of peace, a reminder that even the most distant roads can be walked slowly, with care, with patience, with quiet grace. From the hush of space itself, the thought drifts quietly toward the question of why such a journey matters, why eyes still follow the red glow, even when the path is long and uncertain. Mars waits in patience, offering no treasures, promising no shelter, and yet the gaze returns to it, night after night, as though some hidden part of the heart already knows it cannot turn away. It is not because the land is gentle, nor because life there is assured, but because to reach outward at all is to listen to the old whisper of curiosity, a whisper that has always guided the mind across oceans and skies. This longing carries no weight of gain, but something quieter recognition. In the red shimmer of Mars, humanity sees a softened reflection of itself, a reminder that to exist is also to wonder, to drift beyond the safe edges of comfort. The barren plains, the thin breath of its air, the pale sweep of its light. These are not invitations of safety, but mirrors showing how rare and fragile Earth truly is, how seas and forests are delicate gifts cradled in time. By turning toward another world, one finds the way back to this one, breathing more slowly, with a gentler gratitude. So, the meaning folds inward as much as it unfolds outward. The path to Mars runs not only through stars, but through the inner terrain of patience, of imagination, of quiet strength. To think of stepping there is to remember that life is not bound to a single horizon, that it can stretch softly into greater distances, not with force but with endurance. Mars becomes not a conquest, but a symbol of continuity, the wish to keep walking even in silence. The reasons are not loud, and they have no need to be. They move like hidden tides, almost unseen yet steady. To dream of Mars is to honor the part of the spirit that yearns not for victory, but for presence, to stand beneath a new sky, to greet a different dawn, to let another horizon lay its stillness upon the heart. These are not prizes to measure, but gentle recognitions, like the way a song hums long after the note has gone, or how a flame glows softly even after the fire fades. Mars is distant and yet near. It drifts in a span that asks for patience, and still it shines within the same sky that cradles Earth each night. It belongs to the universe of stone and dust, and at once to the universe of dream and thought. To look upon it is to hold both truth and vision, both reality and story, so lightly interwoven they cannot be pulled apart. And so, the meaning rests not in the moment of arrival, but in the gentle act of reaching. Every mission, every imagined step, every faint whisper of possibility becomes part of a lullaby sung across generations, reminding that curiosity itself is a form of light. Mars glows not only as a planet, but as that light made visible, steady, patient waiting. And within the rhythm of the stars, the thought comes to rest. Mars is not sought for promises, but followed for its silence, for its quiet reminder that to exist is also to ask, and to ask is also to dream. Thus, the red world remains both far and near, both stone and vision, turning slowly in the night, as though it were always meant to be both real and dreamlike, carried together in the same breath. And from the stillness of distance, the thought flows onward, resting now upon the long span of time that stretches between departure and arrival. For to reach Mars is never a sudden crossing, but a passage measured in months, slow and unhurried, like the rhythm of tides upon a darkened sea. The journey is long because Earth and Mars are not fixed islands, but drifting worlds, each circling the sun along its own invisible path. When a spacecraft leaves Earth, it cannot move straight across like a bird through the air, for there is no air to part, no sky to cut, only the vast geometry of orbits, guiding its way soft and patient as lines traced in sand by the turning of water. To travel outward is to glide upon these lines, curving gently, letting gravity lead like a silent hand. And so the path extends not swift, but slow, unfolding across half a year or more, like a leaf carried down a long and winding stream. And in that length of time, months unfold, not as numbers, but as breaths, each one carrying the travelers deeper into silence. The ship moves steadily, yet to those inside time stretches wide each day, unfolding like a drop of water falling into an endless ocean, leaving ripples that fade slowly into the dark. The clocks continue their quiet turning, yet the mind feels the hours like waves, rising and sinking, never hurried, never still. To live within this span is to learn patience to breathe with the rhythm of the void itself. Each day aboard such a vessel carries with it the sameness of repetition, yet within that sameness lies a soft weight. The body drifts in weightlessness, not pressed down by gravity, but floating gently as though caught in a dream where movement is unanchored. Muscles without their usual pull begin to soften bones, grow quieter, less burdened, like branches left too long in still water. The body becomes a reflection of its environment, adapting to silence, to suspension, to the absence of familiar weight. It is both freedom and fragility, both release and surrender. The mind, too, drifts in this long tide. To look through a window and see only darkness sprinkled with light is to feel at once wonder and solitude. Days become indistinguishable, each one merging into the next, like pages written all in the same shade of ink. The heart carries memories of earth, of voices, of winds, of forests, moving, and holds them against the hush that surrounds. And though communication continues, signals take minutes to cross the void, each message softened by distance, as though the voices of home were wrapped in layers of silence before they arrive. In such a journey, patience is not only a virtue, but a necessity. The crew learns to live within cycles, not of seasons, but of small rituals. A meal prepared, a conversation shared, a moment of stillness, gazing into the unbroken dark. These rituals become anchors, gentle rhythms, to steady the heart against the endless drift of time. And slowly, the days are no longer counted as steps toward an end, but as ripples of being, each one complete in itself, each one part of the whole tide that carries them forward. To imagine this passage is to imagine a candle floating on a lake at night. The flame is steady, its glow small, yet constant, drifting without rush, carried by unseen currents. Each moment of the journey is such a flame, fragile, enduring, patient, marking the presence of life, moving through a place where otherwise there would be none. And as the candle drifts, it does not hurry toward the far shore, but accepts the long stillness, finding meaning not only in arrival, but in the quiet persistence of its glow. Thus, the months of travel are not a barrier, but a teacher showing that to reach another world requires not only engines and fuel, but also endurance of the spirit, the willingness to stretch time into something softer, something slower. The voyage becomes less about conquering distance and more about dwelling within it, letting each day unfold like a drop upon water each night, like a breath drawn into silence. And so, the journey to Mars is long not because of failure or delay, but because such is the nature of orbits, of cycles, of the slow rhythm by which the universe turns. It is a journey measured not in haste, but in patience, in the countless drops of time that fall one by one forming an ocean of stillness that must be crossed. And in this way, the very length of the passage becomes part of the story, shaping the travelers as surely as the destination itself. As the ship drifts on, the gaze folds inward to the quiet figure inside, suspended in stillness, where gravity has fallen away. On Earth, gravity is constant, a quiet hand pressing gently down, shaping every step, every breath, every beat of motion. It holds muscles firm, it keeps bones strong, it draws each part of the body into balance, as though the whole being were tied softly to the ground by invisible threads. But in the drifting silence of space, that pull grows faint until it is almost gone, leaving the body suspended unanchored, as though caught in a dream where falling never ends. In this dreamlike state, the body moves freely, each gesture slow and unhurried, as though the air itself had turned into water and wrapped around every motion. At first, such weightlessness feels like freedom, like a gentle release from burden, a sense of floating through the night without effort, like leaves carried quietly upon a pond. Yet slowly, almost without notice, the body begins to change. Muscles no longer asked to carry the weight of steps or hold the frame upright soften little by little, as though melting into stillness. Bones once pressed firm by the pull of earth become lighter, more fragile, like branches that have rested too long in a river's flow, losing their strength as they surrender to the water's caress. The body once grounded becomes more delicate, more like the dream it seems to be living. Each heartbeat continues steady as a metronome in the silence, but the rhythm that guided it on earth is altered. The blood once drawn downward now drifts evenly, spreading in ways unfamiliar, as though the body itself were relearning the language of flow. The breath, though unchanged, feels different, for the chest rises without the weight of gravity pressing down. Every motion becomes a new pattern, a new balance, like a dance practiced not upon a floor, but in the still waters of a quiet pool. The mind, too, is touched by this absence. To float constantly is to feel as though living within a dream, stretched wide, a dream without waking. It is soothing, yet it also whispers of fragility, for the body is a creature of earth, shaped by its steady embrace. Without that embrace, it drifts not only in space, but in form, slowly becoming something softer, thinner, more fleeting. And in this change, there is both beauty and vulnerability, as though the human body were a flame flickering in air, too still to carry its heat. Yet this drifting existence carries lessons gentle and profound. It shows how deeply life is tied to the pull of the world beneath it, how every cell listens to gravity as though it were a silent song. In its absence, the body remembers how dependent it has been upon that song, and how fragile it feels when the music quiets. Muscles no longer march, they sigh. Bones no longer bear, they release. The whole being begins to echo the stillness around it, until it feels less like a traveler and more like a shadow of Earth's memory carried lightly through space. And so, living in weightlessness is both a liberation and a challenge, a dream of floating wrapped around a truth of fragility. The body continues steady but altered, carrying with it the reminder that to walk upon Mars will mean first enduring months of this silent transformation. Each day in microgravity is like a thread woven into a larger fabric, and as the days collect, the fabric itself becomes thin, translucent, delicate. In this way, the voyage teaches not only patience, but humility for the body, is not invincible, but tender as soft as water, as transient as light. It adapts, but it also fades, reminding the traveler that space is not conquered by strength, but endured by care. To live without gravity is to live in a dream, both beautiful and precarious, a dream where every breath is at once free and fragile, drifting softly within the endless night. And as the body drifts softly in weightlessness, thought flows outward again into the space that surrounds it, a space not only silent and dark, but filled with things unseen, moving quietly through the endless night. Radiation, in its simplest sense, is the travel of energy carried as though on invisible streams, crossing the cosmos without pause. In space, these streams are not blocked by air or softened by clouds, for there is no atmosphere here to catch them, no sky to scatter them into gentle light. They come as though from nowhere, particles too small for eyes to notice, too quiet for ears to hear, moving without sound, without color, like dust that glides unseen across a sunbeam. And yet, though invisible, they pass through, brushing softly against whatever they meet, even the bodies of those who drift within their path. To imagine them is to think of grains of sand carried by a wind that cannot be felt, or tiny motes of dust suspended in a shaft of sunlight, dancing slowly, crossing one another, vanishing as they drift. They are not harsh in their arrival, but constant, as though the universe itself is always whispering, sending countless threads of quiet energy across its wide expanse. A traveler through space becomes like a figure walking through a field of drifting pollen, touched by things that cannot be seen, wrapped in a shimmer that is more felt than known. On Earth, the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field serve as guardians, soft blankets of protection that shield the surface from much of this invisible tide. They turn aside the streams, scatter the particles, wrap life in a gentle cocoon of safety. But in the open silence between worlds, that cocoon is left behind, and the body floats within the current itself, touched by its steady, unseen flow. It is not violent, not sudden, but patient, a presence that lingers, with every moment woven into the very airless expanse. Each particle that arrives is like a faint spark crossing the dark, a grain of light moving at unimaginable speed, yet soft as a thought when it meets the skin. The body does not sense it directly, for there is no flash, no sound, only the quiet passage of something too small to be grasped. Yet with time, the countless grains collect like drizzle upon stone, each drop gentle yet together, forming a rhythm that cannot be ignored. In this way, radiation becomes a silent companion, always present, always drifting part of the background fabric of space itself. The challenge then is not in a single moment, but in the long unfolding of exposure. A day passes, and then another, each one carrying with it the soft brush of these unseen travelers. Weeks and months follow, and the body, fragile as a flame carried in still air, continues onward, receiving what the darkness offers. It is not the loudness of danger, but the constancy of presence, a gentle reminder that space, though vast and quiet, is never empty. And so, within the ship walls are placed between the travelers and the void layers, meant to soften the touch of what moves unseen outside. They do not stop everything, for nothing can, but they dim the flow like curtains, softening the light of morning or clouds drifting slowly across the sun. The journey continues in this way, wrapped in protection yet still touched, always balanced between safety and exposure, always requiring patience and care. This is why the path to Mars is long, not only in distance and time, but also in endurance of the unseen. For as months stretch, radiation remains weaving itself into the story of the voyage like a quiet hum that never ceases. It does not hurry. It does not rest. It simply is like the steady rhythm of waves upon a shore or the unbroken stillness of night itself. To travel through it is to accept its presence, to drift within its unseen tide, to move forward in harmony with what cannot be turned away. And so, the thought settles here, gentle and unhurried. The journey to Mars is shaped not only by distance, not only by time, but also by this invisible sea filled with dust-like sparks that pass silently through the dark. They are part of the great stillness, part of the endless rhythm of the universe, and they remind the traveler that every step outward is also a step into the unknown. Yet in that unknown, there is beauty, for even the unseen carries its own quiet light, a reminder that the cosmos, though vast, touches all who move within it. As the unseen dust passes quietly through the dark, there is also a hush that lingers closer, folded into the narrow rooms of the vessel. For those who travel, the vessel becomes the whole world, a small chamber carried through an immeasurable sea. Its walls hold life, yet they also define its limits, enclosing the traveler in a space no larger than a room, a fragile shelter, adrift upon an ocean without horizon. To live here is to know both safety and confinement, both the comfort of protection and the hush of being apart. Beyond the walls lies infinity, and within them only a narrow place to rest and breathe. In this way, the journey is as much about the mind as it is about the body. To be cut off from Earth is not simply to be far in distance, but to feel the absence of all that once surrounded life, the voices that filled the air, the skies that changed with dawn and dusk, the ground that offered footsteps and seasons. The ship carries none of these cycles. Its light does not shift with the sun, its air does not stir with wind, its walls do not open to fields or forests. It is a bubble of constancy floating through a river of change. And in this constancy lies both peace and weight. The silence that fills the vessel is steady, yet it is never empty. Machines breathe with a low hum, systems turn with faint rhythms, as though the ship itself were alive, whispering to keep its passengers company. Yet outside of these sounds, there is little else. Days pass with the same tones, the same walls, the same faces, and though routine brings order, it also brings stillness, a repetition that blurs the edges of time. Hours dissolve into one another, and the mind drifts between wakefulness and dream, unable to measure the passage except by its own slow rhythm. Isolation is not only the absence of others, but the presence of unchanging closeness. Companions share the same narrow rooms, the same air, the same long stretches of waiting. There is no door to step outside, no window to open into the breeze, no place to walk where silence might be broken. And so, the closeness itself becomes another form of solitude, where each person feels both surrounded and alone, both part of a small circle, and yet far from the greater circle of Earth. It is like living within a single room, carried endlessly across a dark ocean. Outside, stars drift in their countless numbers, yet they cannot be touched. Inside each corner is familiar, each gesture repeated each sound, a soft echo. The immensity of the cosmos presses against the walls, while the narrowness within presses gently upon the mind. Between the two, the traveler breathes steady, but aware always, balanced between vastness and confinement. Yet silence is not only a trial, but also a companion. It moves with the traveler, offering space for reflection, for thought, for the slow unfolding of memory. In its quiet presence, the heart learns to settle, the mind learns to listen to its own rhythms, the body learns to drift without haste. At times, the stillness soothes, wrapping the traveler like a blanket of night. At times, the stillness weighs, reminding of how far away the world of rivers, voices, and winds has become. Silence, then, is both gentle friend and quiet test, asking endurance while offering rest. To live in such a state is to breathe with patience, to allow each moment to pass without demand, to treat repetition not as burden, but as rhythm. The mind, though it longs for change, can also learn to float, to accept sameness, as though it were the tide of an endless sea. In this way, the challenge of isolation becomes not a wall, but a mirror, reflecting the inner landscapes of thought and dream, reminding the traveler that even in confinement, there is space enough to wander inward. And so, the journey through isolation is neither loud nor sudden, but slow and continuous, as gentle as the hum of machinery and as steady as the stars outside the window. It is not only a challenge to endure, but also a rhythm, to learn a rhythm that echoes the nature of space itself, wide, unchanging, and infinite in its silence. The quiet rhythm of isolation blends softly into another truth, that the silence does not only hold the traveler, but also the vessel that carries them, a companion, just as fragile, just as patient. The spacecraft, small against the immensity, is a lantern held against the darkness, a thin shell separating breath from the infinite stillness. Within its walls, air circles gently purified and returned as though the ship itself were a silent forest, breathing back life to those who rest inside. Water drifts in quiet loops, a hidden stream that never runs dry, its presence soft as dew gathered in the night. Power flows from the sun, captured and stored like embers, cradled in a vessel, glowing with warmth that refuses to fade. Each system moves in harmony with the others, weaving a fabric so delicate that even a single tear could unravel the whole. To imagine this vessel is to imagine a candle set afloat upon invisible waters. Its flame is small, steady, but surrounded by winds no eye can see. These winds are not the breezes of earth, but the unseen tides of radiation, the emptiness that presses endlessly upon the hull, the distance that stretches without measure. The flame must be guarded with devotion, for there is no hand to relight it if it falters. Yet in its fragility, it glows, offering warmth and shelter within a sea of shadows. Each hum of machinery is like a heartbeat, a pulse echoing through the silence. Nothing rests, nothing sleeps, for every rhythm must remain unbroken. Lights must burn softly, air must flow without pause, warmth must hold steady against the void. The travelers may drift into dreams, their breathing slow and calm, but the ship remains awake. Its vigilance is constant, as though it too were alive, listening, adjusting, carrying them onward. Fragility does not mean weakness here, but attentiveness. Every circuit, every valve, Every current is tended with care, as though each were a thread in the fragile web of survival. Nothing is taken for granted. There is no river waiting to refill the stores of water, no forest to breathe new air, no shelter waiting beyond the long horizon. All that is needed must already be carried, as though the ship were a small earth, in miniature, a pocket of balance floating through the dark. And in this fragility, there is also beauty, for to endure so far with so little is to reveal the strength hidden in delicacy. The vessel does not race, does not thunder through the void. It glides with a quiet grace, almost unseen like a leaf carried by still waters. Within it is preserved the essence of home air that once moved through trees' warmth, that once shone upon oceans, voices that carry the memory of wind and rain. It does not leave earth behind, but holds it gently inside, folded into its fragile walls. The voyage to Mars depends as much on this quiet companion as on the human spirit. Just as the crew must learn to breathe with patience, the vessel must hold its own breath without pause, guarding its fragile flame across the distance. Together, they form a single whole human and machine moving as one, drifting side by side through the endless night. The ship breathes with them, shelters their rest, and in return they trust it, caring for its delicate endurance, as though it were another living being. To reflect on this is to see that the path is not only a test of endurance for people, but also for the fragile lantern they carry with them. It is not only courage and curiosity that sustain the voyage, but also the quiet persistence of circuits and wires of pumps and valves of light that must not dim. The fragility of this balance is what makes it precious, for it shows that even in emptiness, life can be kept alive when flame and breath are guarded with devotion. And so, the thought drifts into stillness. Again, the journey to Mars is not a conquest, but a long, delicate vigil, a candle glowing against invisible winds, a lantern held within the night. It is not only humanity that travels, but also the fragile vessel that endures beside them, each heartbeat of machine and of traveler, joined steady and unbroken, carrying light into the quiet sea. A pause lingers, and thought drifts gently from the silence of the long journey toward a softer vision, the idea of arriving and shaping a place where life might rest. The mind begins to picture what the first base on Mars could be, not as a fortress or a tower, but as a quiet shelter folded gently into the red dust. To imagine such a base is to imagine a nest, small and careful, cradled against a land both vast and still. It would not rise suddenly, but settle slowly, built with patience like stones, gathered one by one to make a resting place. The word habitat may sound technical, but here it becomes a whisper, a cocoon, a pocket of earth, carried into the unfamiliar hush of another world. The surface of Mars offers little comfort by itself, for its air is thin, its winds too faint to breathe, and its soil dry as ash. Yet from these very conditions, the vision of shelter grows like a lantern lit in the dark. The idea is simple in essence: to create a space where warmth can be held, where air can circle, where water can be found and kept. Each element sounds plain, but each carries the weight of life, like threads woven into fabric that wraps gently around the traveler. A base is not merely walls and roofs, but an embrace against the cold silence. In such a place, the body could breathe as it does on earth, drawing in air that has been gathered and softened, warmed, and purified, as though the ship of space had stretched its breath onto the surface. Light from the sun could be caught and stored like dew in a vessel, giving power to small machines that hum quietly in rhythm with human need. Water drawn from hidden ice or carried carefully across the void would circle through the base as though it were a secret stream, endlessly flowing, endlessly renewed. Each system, each thread of life, becomes part of a delicate balance, like a garden tended in the midst of desert silence. The first base is imagined not as grand, but as modest a beginning rather than an end. Perhaps no larger than a house, perhaps little more than a room where a few can rest and work. It is still enough to transform the land, for within it burns the quiet truth that life has placed its breath upon another world. To see such a base is to see not only metal and glass, but the presence of home stretched softly into new soil, fragile echo of earth, singing faintly beneath a different sky. This vision is not born of haste, but of patience. Just as seeds are planted long before they bloom, the base must begin small, its roots hidden its promise, unfolding slowly across time. It would carry within it the memory of forests, rivers, skies, yet it would not seek to replace them. Instead, it would serve as a bridge, a resting step between one world and another, between the comfort of what is known and the silence of what is waiting. In this way, the first base is less a conquest than a lullaby, a gentle note sung against the vastness. To imagine the travelers stepping into this place is to picture them carrying with them the breath of earth, releasing it into rooms that hold it carefully, like a jar holding the fragrance of spring. Outside, the dust drifts endlessly, the winds murmur faintly, the sun rises pale in the thin sky. Inside, warmth gathers light, glows, voices rise and fall in quiet conversation. The contrast is tender, not harsh, for it shows the smallness of life, yet also its persistence, its ability to carry fire into the cold and keep it alive. Each wall, each window, each system humming within the base would be a reminder that technology itself is fragile, yet also nurturing. Machines may seem hard and unfeeling, but here they are, as gentle as caretakers, sustaining breath, carrying warmth, protecting rest. They become companions as much as tools, their steady rhythms joining with the rhythms of the body, forming a harmony that allows sleep to come even in the midst of alien silence. In this sense, the base is not only built of steel, but also of trust, a trust as delicate as the faith that seeds will rise after winter. Thus, the idea of the first base becomes more than a plan. It becomes a dream that rests quietly in the mind, a dream of presence, of continuity of breathing in places where no breath has been before. It is not imagined as final, but as beginning as the first whisper of a larger story still to come. For now, it is enough to picture the glow of a small shelter beneath the pale light of a Martian dawn, a lantern waiting patiently, a nest folded into the red silence, carrying life across the distance and keeping it safe. Beneath the surface of Mars, hidden from the eyes that wander across its red deserts, there lies a quiet, secret one that rests not in fire or stone, but in the stillness of frozen water. It is not the flowing water of rivers, not the restless waves of seas, but ice buried in shadows, preserved like memory beneath the dust. To speak of this ice is to imagine a reservoir of silence, a cold breath folded carefully under layers of time. It lingers unseen, yet it carries the promise of presence like dew that never rose to the morning light. Scientists call it subsurface ice, a term that sounds firm, but it softens when thought of as a hidden frost, a crystal veil beneath the soil. In this hush, the word subsurface becomes not a barrier, but a blanket, something that covers gently as though the ground itself were keeping a dream safe. The word ice, so simple, turns tender when pictured not as something hard, but as quiet clarity, as the shine of a frozen pond beneath moonlight. Beneath Mars, the frost is like a whisper of past waters still resting, still waiting, still breathing its slow rhythm in the dark. The presence of this frozen water has been sensed by machines orbiting high above, sending signals that reveal more than the eye alone could see. Radars and detectors measure reflections, but their voices are soft, returning patterns that must be read with care, like echoes in a cave. These signals tell of hidden sheets, not wide oceans, but layers tucked under dust and rock, preserved by the chill of Martian nights. To imagine them is to imagine snow, buried under endless sand, still cold, still intact even as ages pass quietly over it. From here, the thought moves to what this hidden water might mean. For those who dream of setting foot upon Mars, such frozen reserves are more than a curiosity. They are like wells asleep beneath the earth, waiting to be awakened. Water, after all, is life, and even in frozen form, it carries the memory of rivers, the echo of rain, the softness of mist. To imagine uncovering such ice is to picture a slow unfolding, like finding a spring in a desert, not sudden or dramatic, but gentle, like a cup of coolness placed in tired hands. Yet this ice is not only about survival, it is also about connection, for where there is frozen water, there may once have been flowing streams, and where streams once moved, there may have been moments of warmth, of shelter, of possibility. The presence of subsurface ice is like a story half written, its words buried under dust, its sentences faded, but not gone. Each layer speaks not only of the present, but of what has been carrying hints of cycles that once shaped the planet with their rhythm. The ice becomes a page in the diary of Mars, a page that is quiet but still legible to those who listen gently. Thus, the image of Mars softens again, no longer only a dry desert, no longer only a barren stone, but a world that holds in its depth something tender, something preserved. The ice becomes like a pulse beneath the surface, a reminder that even in silence there are traces of breath. To dream of touching it is to dream of touching the memory of another time, to place one's hand upon a frozen window and feel the faint chill of history. In this way, subsurface water is not only resource but poetry, not only matter but meaning. It is easy to picture the ground above as silent plains, lit by pale sunlight, carrying winds that lift the dust in slow spirals. Yet below, there rests this hidden frost, unmoving, unseen, and yet full of quiet importance, like roots of a tree that lie unseen while holding all above. Steady the buried ice holds within it the quiet strength of possibility. It does not need to be hurried nor forced, for its presence is already enough a reminder that Mars is not lifeless, but layered, carrying secrets folded into its very skin. To rest upon this thought is to feel how every world carries more than what is seen. The red surface glows with dust and stone, yet beneath it lies this other face, cool and clear, like a shadowed mirror. The hidden ice is part of the rhythm of the planet, part of the balance between warmth and cold, part of the slow breathing of cycles too vast to rush. It is one more reminder that the universe, in its silence, always holds more than it first reveals. Like frost waiting under soil for dawn, the thought of subsurface ice remains gentle, unhurried, patient. It is both fact and symbol, both presence and promise. In the quiet journey to Mars, it becomes a beacon, not of fire, but of water, not of urgency, but of calm, showing that even in the most distant places, there is always something tender, resting beneath the surface, waiting softly in the dark. From beneath the frozen quiet of hidden water, thought rises slowly upward, meeting the air above where the sky of Mars waits delicate and pale. The atmosphere of Mars is thin, almost transparent, more like a veil than a blanket surrounding the planet in a whisper rather than an embrace. On Earth, air presses softly against the skin, filling the lungs with oxygen, the element that feeds each breath, as gentle and unnoticed as the rhythm of waves along a shore. On Mars, the air is far more fragile, carrying only a trace of that life-giving presence, as though the sky itself has forgotten how to breathe. To imagine it is to imagine standing on a high mountain where the air grows faint, and then to soften that thought further, picturing it as a dream where breath feels both present and elusive. In this hushed world, every breath becomes precious, not taken for granted, but guarded, held, and offered carefully. The thinness of the atmosphere means that lungs so accustomed to fullness would find only emptiness, like hands reaching into mist. Oxygen, which on Earth flows freely, like a river, is here, reduced to a trickle, more like a distant spring hidden beneath stone. To live in such air is not simply to breathe, but to create breathing anew, to weave it gently within shelters where machines act as silent gardens, turning carbon dioxide into the promise of breath. The whisper of this atmosphere is not only light in substance, but also quiet in strength. On Earth, air carries sound, carries warmth, carries clouds and rain, all the moving textures of weather. On Mars, it carries almost nothing too thin to hold the weight of a storm, as Earth knows it, too faint to spread warmth evenly across the land. The air lies upon the planet like a silk thread stretched too wide, delicate, unable to gather itself into fullness. It is a sky that feels more like a shadow, a suggestion of presence, rather than a companion. Yet even in this thinness, there is beauty, for the light of the sun, traveling through such a veil, takes on colors that Earth does not see. Sunsets on Mars drift into soft blues horizons, tinted with delicate shades, as though the air were painting with fewer strokes, leaving behind only the quietest tones. To stand within such a sky would be to see not abundance, but refinement, not fullness, but clarity, as though the world itself had been pared down to its simplest breath. The stillness of that sight carries its own calm, like the hush that follows twilight, when the air seems almost to hold its breath. For travelers who come to Mars, the thinness of air becomes both a challenge and a lesson. It cannot be entered unprepared, for lungs would search and find too little. Yet with care, shelters can be built where breathing is possible, where air is thickened and softened, made to resemble the embrace of Earth. Machines hum gently, weaving oxygen like invisible threads, filling each chamber with the quiet gift of breath. In this way, technology becomes a tender gardener, planting invisible seeds of air where none would otherwise grow. To imagine living in such a place is to imagine being wrapped within two worlds at once, outside a silence where the sky cannot fill the chest, and inside a quiet sanctuary where air is cultivated like a fragile crop. Each inhalation would feel more deliberate, more treasured, as though the body were learning to savor breath the way one savors a drop of water on a dry tongue. Breathing itself would become a rhythm of mindfulness, a reminder of both fragility and endurance. Thus, the air of Mars is not absent, but faint, a ghost of what Earth carries in abundance. It is a veil rather than a blanket, a whisper rather than a voice, a reminder that life does not flow here naturally, but must be invited, created, and sustained. Yet in this very faintness lies a kind of wonder, for it teaches the value of breath, the delicacy of life, the patience required to nurture what is scarce. To rest within this thought is to see the atmosphere not as a barrier, but as a gentle test, a quiet question asked of anyone who would step here. Can you cherish breath enough to make it your companion, even when the sky offers almost none? The answer comes not in force, but in care, in the slow weaving of air within quiet walls, in the soft rhythm of lungs that continue to rise and fall, even in a world where the sky itself barely breathes. And so, the thought drifts onward, carrying with it the gentle truth that even in thinness, even in scarcity, there can be calm. For the act of breathing, though fragile on Mars, remains what it has always been, the most natural of rhythms, the slow tide that carries life forward, one breath at a time across the silence of another world. From the thin veil of air that lingers softly above Mars, thought drifts outward again toward the light that falls across this distant world, a light that is gentler, paler, and slower to warm. The sun seen from Mars is the same star that rises each morning on Earth, but here it glows with a softer voice, its rays stretched farther across space, arriving thinner, as though filtered through layers of invisible mist. On Earth, sunlight pours down like a river, filling the day with brightness, scattering shadows and warming skin with a touch both steady and familiar. On Mars, it comes more like a delicate stream, a slower trickle of warmth, enough to touch, but not enough to embrace. It is still the sun, yet its presence feels distant, almost shy, as though it were watching from farther away. The sky itself responds to this faintness, carrying light differently than on Earth, where Earth's air scatters the sun's rays into blues and golds. Mars, with its thinner veil, lets the light fall straighter, less softened, casting longer shadows, gentler hues. Days on Mars seem quieter, the light less insistent, as if the planet itself has chosen to rest beneath a calmer dawn. To imagine standing beneath that sky is to imagine a world lit not by brilliance but by a kind of twilight stretched across the day, subdued, tender, almost dreamlike. This fainter light shapes not only sight, but also time. On Earth, sunlight drives the cycles of growth, of warmth, of rhythm in body and mind. On Mars, the light is like a candle flame, across a wide hall, reaching the walls, but never filling the space completely. Plants, if they are to grow here, must be sheltered and tended, placed under glass that gathers and magnifies the light, like cupping hands around a flickering ember to keep it alive. The dream of gardens on Mars is not impossible, but it will be a dream of patience, of nurturing under a gentler sky. The warmth of the sun, too, feels different here, where Earth holds heat in its oceans, in its atmosphere, wrapping itself in layers that keep the air alive. Mars lets it slip away. The thin air cannot hold the warmth, and so days may brighten, but nights quickly fall back into chill like a breath that never lingers. The sun shines, yet its touch fades swiftly, leaving shadows to stretch across stone. Still in that fleeting warmth, there is a beauty, for it makes each beam precious, each glimmer of heat, small treasure carried through the cold. To the eyes of travelers, the sun from Mars would look smaller, its disk less commanding, as though the star itself had withdrawn slightly, keeping its brilliance at a distance. Yet this smaller light has its own quiet grace. It does not overwhelm the horizon. It rests there gently, letting the sky hold more of its own silence. The familiar becomes unfamiliar, and in that change lies wonder, for the same sun that burns so strongly on Earth can appear so fragile here, a reminder of how space stretches, how distance softens even the brightest flame. In this way, the light of Mars becomes more than illumination. It becomes a companion, teaching slowness, teaching reverence. To walk beneath such a sky would be to notice more deeply, to linger in the subtle shades of shadow, to see beauty not in the flood of brilliance, but in the patience of dim glow. The sun here is still the keeper of days, but it counts them more quietly, marking time with a softer hand. To rest in this thought is to see that light need not be overwhelming to hold meaning. Even when thin, even when faint, it still guides, still warms, still reminds of connection to the great star at the heart of the solar family. On Mars, the sun teaches that presence can be gentle, that even across distance, warmth and brightness continue like a memory that refuses to fade. Thus, the weaker light does not diminish the dream of Mars. It shapes it, softens it, turns it into something quieter, slower, more fragile, and more precious. To imagine living there is to imagine cherishing each glimmer, each shadow, each shift of hue, as though it were a whispered gift. For in the faint sunlight of Mars lies not loss, but a lullaby, a steady glow across stone and dust, reminding that even at the edges of reach, the sun still shines. From the thought of sunlight falling gently upon stone, the mind drifts softly into another question, quieter still, what it would mean to live beneath such a sky, to carry Earth's breath into a place that was never shaped for it. For many, the image of Mars has long been a dream, painted in colors of hope and wonder, like a new frontier shimmering at the edge of thought. In this dream, domes rise across the plains, like bubbles of glass, each one filled with gardens and voices, warmth enclosed against the cold. Within them, people walk freely, as though the planet had already become a second home, its silence replaced by laughter, its thin air traded for the fullness of song. These visions are soft, like mirages woven gently into imagination, carrying the comfort of possibility. Yet the truth beneath these dreams is quieter, slower shaped, less by ease than by patience. Mars, with its dust and chill, with its thin breath and faint light, does not offer a welcome. It waits still and unchanging, as though to remind that life here is not natural, but borrowed. To live on Mars is to build a cocoon, fragile, yet enduring a space where Earth is carried inward in air, in water, in warmth, like seeds preserved carefully against the dark. It is not conquest, but careful tending, as though each step upon the ground were the laying of roots in soil that was never meant to sprout. To think of daily life here is to imagine rhythms, both familiar and altered. Mornings would begin not with the rising of the sun across an open sky, but with light switched gently on inside narrow walls, an imitation of dawn. Breaths would always be taken within the shelter of crafted air, each inhalation a reminder of distance, each exhalation a fragile offering to the systems that sustain. Steps outside, if taken at all, would be wrapped in layers of protection, each movement slowed, each gesture careful, as though one were walking not through a neighborhood, but through a dream where even the air could not be trusted. In such a life, the mind would often return to earth, to memories of breezes and rain, of rivers spilling freely, of voices heard without delay. Yet within this longing might also grow a gentler strength, a way of cherishing what is fragile, of noticing each drop of water, each breath of air, each glimmer of light, as though it were more than ordinary. To live on Mars would be to live with constant awareness, not of burden, but of the delicate balance that keeps life alight. Dreams and realities fold together here, not in opposition, but as two layers of the same veil. The dream brings vision, the hope that guides footsteps outward, the picture of possibility that makes the impossible worth trying. The reality brings caution, reminding that survival is not effortless, that every comfort must be crafted, that every moment of life is a thread woven with care. Together, they form the song of Mars, not a melody of conquest, but of endurance, of tending, of learning to breathe slowly in a place that does not yet know breath. The beauty of this vision is not lessened by its difficulty. In fact, it becomes deeper, softer, when seen through the quiet lens of patience. To imagine Mars as a second home is to see humanity not as invader, but as guest, bringing with it the breath of forests, the rhythm of oceans, the warmth of firelight. In this way, Mars becomes less a world to be taken, and more a world to be gently joined. Its silence kept its vastness, honored, its fragility matched with human care. Thus the thought rests between dream and truth, as if standing upon a threshold that opens both ways. To dream is to drift forward, carried by vision. To face reality is to pause, to listen, to move with patience. Between them lies the true path, a path not of haste, but of quiet endurance, of learning to let life bloom slowly beneath a colder sun, finding rest even in a place that has never known it. From the veil of dreams and realities that touch the thought of living on Mars, the mind drifts slowly outward toward another layer of truth, the quiet weight of what it takes to turn vision into being measured not only in time, but in resources vast as oceans. To imagine a base rising on Mars is to picture more than domes and air, more than gardens under glass. It is also to imagine the long chain of effort that stretches back to Earth, each link carrying the weight of materials, of energy, of care. Nothing upon Mars comes freely, not food, not warmth, not breath itself, for each must be carried or created, each must be sustained with patience. The thought of cost is not only numbers written in ledgers, but the gathering of countless streams, rivers of labor, oceans of dedication, each flowing together to keep a single, fragile flame alive beneath a distant sky. In this hush, the word cost feels less like a sum and more like a tide rising, quietly, pulling gently, reminding that to sustain life on another world is to lean upon the full measure of a planet behind it. Ships must be built, fuel must be drawn, machines must be crafted with delicacy, each a thread in the web of survival stretched across millions of miles. These threads are not light. They carry the weight of nations, of generations of hopes, gathered silently in the hands of many. To speak of resources is to think of energy, yet softened it becomes the image of sunlight caught in silver wings, electricity flowing like streams beneath the skin of the ship, warmth kindled like firelight within a lantern. It is to think of metals drawn from stone, shaped and polished into vessels that will cross the silence, each fragment of matter, lifted from Earth's embrace, as though a grain of sand carried across an ocean. It is to think of food, water, air, each drop, each breath, each seed, preserved like treasure, guarded so that it may unfurl again beneath another sky. The scale of this effort is vast, yet its meaning is quiet, for every journey outward begins with countless steps at home, steps taken not by one, but by many. Engineers trace their hands across blueprints, workers mold steel into forms, scientists shape equations into guidance, pilots prepare to trust machines with their lives. Behind every traveler who lifts away from Earth is a world still watching, still giving, still carrying the weight so that one small vessel may drift across the void. Thus, the cost is not only material, but human, not only energy, but devotion. Each act of preparation is a gift of time, each piece of machinery, a fragment of thought made solid. To bring life to Mars is to weave together the unseen labor of thousands, each thread invisible on its own, but together forming a fabric strong enough to shelter breath within the unbroken silence of space. To rest within this truth is not to feel burden, but to feel the rhythm of interconnection. Just as a tree draws water through its roots and sunlight through its leaves, so too does a mission to Mars draw life from countless sources, each part sustaining the whole. No traveler arrives alone. They carry within them the weight of every hand that built the ship, every mind that shaped the path, every heart that dreamed of reaching further. It is easy to see the glow of Mars in the night sky as a simple spark, distant and delicate. Yet to move toward it is to gather oceans of strength, mountains of patience, and skies of hope, all drawn together into one fragile vessel. The cost is not loud, not sudden. It unfolds like a tide, steady, inevitable, flowing onward in silence until the ship is born, until it begins its slow drift toward that faint red glow. In this way, the thought of cost softens, becoming not a number to be measured, but a reminder of scale of the quiet immensity required to lift life beyond its cradle. It shows that to reach Mars is not only to cross distance, but to gather the whole breadth of Earth into one long exhale, carried into the dark. And as the mind drifts here, the recognition settles gently. The dream of Mars is beautiful, but it is also heavy, carried not by one, but by many, not by ease, but by patience. It is a weight that rests quietly upon humanity's shoulders, reminding that every ember glowing beneath another sky is first kindled by countless sparks at home. From the long weight of cost and resources, the thought moves gently into a quieter question, one that lingers like a whisper in the silence. Is it truly worth the journey, worth the effort worth the patience of so many. The glow of Mars in the night sky has always been soft, no brighter than a wandering star, no nearer than a faint ember resting far beyond. To chase it requires rivers of effort, oceans of energy, lifetimes of thought. Yet still, eyes turn upward. The question is not sharp, but gentle like the rustle of leaves at dusk. Why do humans reach toward what is so distant? Why pour such weight into a dream painted in faint red light? In this hush, the answer feels less like a statement and more like a tide rising and falling without finality. To go to Mars is not only to arrive at a place, but to stretch the measure of what is possible, to remind the heart that limits are not walls, but horizons that drift farther each time they are touched. Whether that is worth the effort cannot be captured in numbers, for numbers rest on paper, while worth rests within the quiet rhythm of longing. The worth is found in discovery, yet softened. It is like the opening of petals beneath a dim sun. To learn how another world breathes, to uncover frozen water beneath dust, to feel the silence of a sky that has never known voices. These are not riches, not treasures, but gentle reminders of how wide existence truly is. Each piece of knowledge is a drop of dew, small and fleeting, yet together they form a shimmer that lightens the vastness of the unknown. There is also worth in perspective, for to look outward is always to look back inward. Mars in its thin air and barren plains shows how rare Earth is, how delicate the forests and seas that cradle every breath. To ask whether Mars is worth the cost is also to ask whether the act of caring for Earth is worth the reflection, for each step toward the red world turns attention homeward again, carrying with it a deeper stillness, a quieter gratitude. Thus the question folds upon itself, becoming not an argument of value, but a meditation upon meaning. The worth of Mars lies not in what it gives, but in what it asks: patience, endurance, humility. It asks for care in the face of fragility, for persistence across silence, for trust in the long rhythm of time. These are not burdens, but lessons woven gently into the fabric of the journey, lessons that linger even if no foot ever presses its soil. The worth is also found in continuity, for as long as people have lived, they have looked beyond the edges of what they know across seas, across skies, across shadows of the unknown. Each crossing seemed impossible until it was done, and each brought with it not only new places, but new ways of seeing. To walk toward Mars is to carry that same quiet thread forward, weaving the old rhythm of exploration into the fabric of tomorrow. Whether or not Mars welcomes life, it has already welcomed wonder, and that alone carries its own gentle weight. In the end, the question remains soft and unanswered because it does not need resolution. To ask, is it worth it, is already to touch the heart of curiosity, to lean into the silence with listening. The worth is not a conclusion, but a presence, a breath that lingers, a thought that drifts across generations like a song never finished. So the mind rests here not with a verdict, but with a stillness. Mars may never give more than its quiet glow, yet that glow has carried human thought for centuries, guiding dreams across time. If the journey is taken, it will not be for riches, nor for ease, but for the same reason people have always looked upward, because to wonder is to live, and to reach is to dream. Thus the question, gentle and unhurried, remains suspended in the dark. Is it worth it? Perhaps it is not about worth at all, but about listening, about drifting with the rhythm of longing, about carrying the ember of curiosity wherever it leads. And in that light, the answer need not be spoken. It is already present in the quiet act of asking. From the gentle question of worth, thought drifts softly into memory, where stories of past attempts linger like faint echoes across the long corridors of time. Before the dream of human footsteps could be spoken, small machines were sent ahead, fragile emissaries of Earth, carrying instruments and signals, their paths traced across the silence. Not all of them arrived. Many drifted into silence before they reached their destination, becoming like whispers lost upon the wind. They are remembered not as loud defeats, but as part of the long rhythm of trying, each one a step folded quietly into the greater story. In those early days, space itself was like an uncharted sea, and each vessel launched was as delicate as a paper boat set upon vast waters. Some fell back before leaving Earth's embrace, their light fading before it could rise beyond the sky. Others traveled far, only to lose their voice at the edge of another world, their signals dissolving into static like ripples, vanishing into deep water. These endings, though quiet, were not endings at all, but markers of how the path was slowly being learned. The record of failure is long, yet it reads less like a list of mistakes and more like the patient unfolding of understanding. Each probe that faltered revealed something unseen, a misstep in design, a hidden challenge in the silence, a lesson that would guide the next attempt. In this way, failure became a teacher soft but persistent, like the tide that reshapes the shore, grain by grain. Without these silent pauses, there would be no steady progress, no path to follow toward the faint red glow. To think of these probes is to imagine lanterns set adrift, their flames extinguished one by one, yet each leaving behind a trace of light that guided those who followed. Some fell into the gravity of Mars itself, their descent unfinished, their impact unobserved. Others circled for a time, and then went still like leaves caught in an eddy before sinking into still water. Their silence is not a warning, but a reminder that the cosmos asks for patience, for humility, for endurance across countless attempts. The dream of Mars has always been larger than a single success or a single failure. Each mission, whether it thrived or faded, has added to the quiet tapestry of knowledge threads woven gently into the larger whole. The failures do not stand apart. They rest within the same fabric as the triumphs, shaping the pattern in ways unseen at first. They remind that every journey through silence is fragile, that even the smallest step forward requires countless unseen trials. Even now, when memories of those first faltering probes are recalled, they do not feel sharp. They drift more like distant waves, their sound softened by time. They are part of the lullaby of exploration, a rhythm of attempts and pauses of reaching and waiting. The story of Mars is not written only in success, but in the patience to continue through failure, in the trust that even silence holds meaning. To rest within this thought is to see that failure itself can be gentle. It does not erase the dream, it deepens it, making each new attempt more careful, more aware, more attuned to the stillness of space. The probes that did not arrive are not lost, but part of the long breathing of exploration, the inhaling and exhaling of effort, stretched across generations. Thus, the failures of the past are not shadows, but echoes, lingering softly, reminding that the path to Mars has never been straight or simple. It has been a slow unfolding, shaped as much by pauses as by progress, as much by silence as by sound. And within this rhythm lies the quiet truth. Every probe, whether it reached or not, carried with it the same ember of curiosity, the same light of longing, the same gentle persistence to know what waits beyond. So the thought settles here, calm and unhurried. The history of failed probes is not a story of loss, but of learning, of patience, of trust in the long rhythm of discovery. Each silence they left behind is part of the lullaby of exploration, carrying forward into the present, guiding softly toward what is yet to come. From the quiet memory of past failures, thought moves softly into the patience that always follows, like a tide drawing back to gather itself again. Science has never hurried. It moves with the slowness of planets, in their orbits steady and unbroken circling, with rhythms older than memory. Each discovery, each attempt rests upon the countless steps before it, like grains of sand slowly settling into a shore. The dream of reaching Mars, of touching its surface with human hands, is not a sprint, but a long breath drawn in and released over decades. In this hush, patience reveals itself as more than waiting. It is the steady heartbeat beneath every calculation, every launch, every quiet failure that becomes a lesson. To breathe with science is to accept the pace of mountains, forming of rivers, carving valleys of stars drifting in their courses. Nothing comes quickly in the cosmos, and so the work of reaching Mars, too, follows the rhythm of long breaths, inhaled slowly, exhaled even more slowly, like a lullaby stretched across generations. Patience is not absence, it is presence softened, like the dim light of dawn spreading before the sun, like shadows lengthening before night. The scientists and engineers who watch their probes vanish into silence are not halted by despair. They pause, they listen, they adjust, and then they begin again. Their patience is the still water into which every ripple of progress falls, widening gently, carrying forward what was learned. The nature of patience is that it does not seek climax. It does not demand quick reward. It holds quietly, like lungs filled with air, waiting for the right moment to release. And when released, the breath does not end. It only begins another cycle, returning again and again, steady, calm, inevitable. So too does science breathe, each attempt rising, pausing, falling, then rising once more, without haste, without end. If one listens closely, this patience feels almost like the pulse of the earth itself, deep and unhurried, flowing beneath oceans, mountains, and winds. The path to Mars lies upon this same pulse, a rhythm that cannot be forced, that asks for surrender to its slowness. The failures, the delays, the long silences between attempts are not interruptions, but part of the rhythm itself. Pauses that give meaning to the motion, rests that make the music soft and whole. In this rhythm, there is a kind of comfort, for to know that science moves slowly is also to know that it moves with care, that it does not rush into fragility, but shapes its steps with the patience of stone shaped by water. Every idea is tested, every error examined, every pause allowed to stretch into understanding. And so, like breathing in sleep, the journey to Mars continues long and steady, each moment a preparation for the next. It is said that stars themselves live by patience, burning not in urgency, but in endurance, shining across millions of years, their light reaching us only after journeys longer than all of human history. If the stars can wait, then so too can science. If the galaxies can drift apart in silence, then so too can humankind drift toward Mars in its own time. The breath is long, but it is unbroken, and within it rests the quiet assurance that the journey is unfolding as it must. Thus, to speak of patience in science is to speak of trust. Trust that the next step will rise when it is ready. Trust that silence itself carries meaning. Trust that the rhythm, though slow, is steady, and that every inhalation, every exhalation draws humanity closer to its quiet dream. It is less a march than a meditation, less a race than a lull, less an urgency than a slow unfolding. So the thought rests here calm and untroubled. Science breathes. As we breathe, long and steady each cycle, carrying us a little further. Patience is its essence, its strength, its song. To listen to it is to hear the lullaby of discovery, a breath drawn from the stars themselves, exhaled gently across the stillness of time. From the patience of science, thought drifts into reflection like a tide that has reached the shore and now draws back soft and unhurried. The journey to Mars, often spoken of as bold and difficult, is in truth only one thread in a much wider fabric, a fabric woven by countless generations, by questions asked under starlight, by hands that built tools from a stone and later engines from fire. Each step has been quiet compared to the immensity of time, and yet each has been part of the same slow current that carries humankind forward. To look back is to see not a single achievement, but a line of moments, each small and fragile, yet gathered together into a river of motion. The ships that failed, the ones that flew the long pauses between them, all of these blend into a rhythm like waves folding one over another without urgency. The attempt to reach another world is not a break from this rhythm, but a continuation of it, a breath taken more deeply, a note played softly in the long song of existence. Nothing is ever lost in such a flow. Even the silences of failure, even the waiting years between progress, remain part of the whole, like shadows, shaping light or rest shaping music. In this way, the journey is not hurried. It cannot be, for time in the cosmos is vast and slow, and human life only a flicker within it. The flicker may be brief, but it is still light, and it joins the long chain of lights that have guided this path. Thus, reflection brings a kind of stillness, like pausing on a hilltop and seeing the valley below, realizing that every step taken was part of the climb. The dream of Mars is not a finish nor a peak, but one bend in a much larger path, a curve along the river that continues without end. To imagine otherwise is to mistake the breath for the body, the moment for the whole. Yet, when seen gently, it becomes clear that this one step, though small, belongs to something infinite. In this hush, the mind understands that the future does not demand haste. The universe has waited for eons. It will continue to wait. Mars, silent and patient in its orbit, does not call urgently, but simply exists a destination only because humans choose to name it so. To move toward it is not to conquer or to rush, but to flow naturally, like water finding its way to the sea, like wind passing over plains without need to hurry. Even the idea of progress softens in this view. Progress is no longer a race, but a rhythm, no longer a prize, but a pattern. Each invention, each experiment is like the gentle rise of breath, filling the lungs, followed by the inevitable exhalation, quiet and calm. The journey to Mars rests within this breathing a single inhalation among many a single moment in the long respiration of knowledge. To remember this is to find peace, for if the journey is not urgent, then its weight is lighter, its pace more natural. There is no demand to arrive quickly, no pressure to finish what the cosmos has only begun. Instead, there is the calm assurance that humanity moves in harmony with greater rhythms, that each attempt is simply part of a song, already playing a song too vast to be rushed, too gentle to be forced. Looking back then is less about measuring distance than about recognizing flow. It is less about how far humanity has gone, and more about how quietly it has continued. The path from ancient firelight to spacecraft is long, but it feels seamless when seen as a current, each stage blending into the next without break. The reflection itself becomes a kind of lull, a pause within the larger breathing of history. So the thought rests untroubled, as the journey is seen for what it is: not an end, not a climax, but a step small and steady in the endless flow of the universe. The stars still shine, the planets still turn, the cosmos still breathes. Mars waits, not with urgency, but with silence. And in that silence lies the gentle truth. The journey itself is part of the dream, and the dream is part of the flow, wide and unending, soft as the breath that carries the traveler into sleep. From the memory of journeys, measured in effort and patience, thought returns softly to the planet itself, the quiet presence that has waited far longer than human eyes have searched for it. Mars remains where it has always been, circling the sun with a rhythm so steady that centuries pass like the ticking of a distant clock. The orbit is a path both simple and profound, a curve traced in silence, without pause, without urgency. To imagine this movement is to picture a lantern drifting endlessly in the dark, glowing faintly, yet never dimming its course, unbroken across the sea of time. The sun, vast and unwavering, draws Mars close and lets it drift away again in the same pattern, repeated through ages, like the inhalation and exhalation of a breath too large to be heard. Each cycle of distance and return becomes a lullaby of motion, a song without words, where the notes are only shadows and light. It is this slow circling that cradles the planet, a rocking that has lasted for billions of years, gentle as the sway of a cradle. In this view, Mars is neither goal nor challenge, but a companion to Earth, another bead on the thread of worlds, turning endlessly around the sun. Their paths never touch, yet they move together in a harmony so ancient that no memory reaches back to its beginning. To look at Mars is to see not a destination waiting to be reached, but a neighbor drifting in the same great tide, a quiet presence always visible when the sky is clear and the night is patient. Thus, the red planet becomes less a place to conquer than a reminder of rhythm. It circles not for us, not because of us, but simply because that is the nature of orbits, the nature of balance. And in that balance lies a kind of peace, a reassurance that the cosmos continues, whether watched or unwatched, whether visited or left alone. The circle holds steady, and the planet drifts onward, faithful to a path written long before any human drew maps of the heavens. To imagine Mars turning is to breathe more slowly. The mind follows the planet's arc, the way the chest follows the rise and fall of air, a rhythm that asks for no effort, no striving, only release. The thin glow of sunlight that touches Mars does not waver. It does not demand, it simply arrives each dawn and fades each dusk, as if whispering that time itself is patient, that there is no need to hurry where the stars are concerned. This patience is soothing, for it suggests that Mars will always be there, moving with its soft red light across the seasons, across the centuries, across the quiet unfolding of all human dreams. The planet waits without waiting, existing without expectation, a calm witness to the flow of time. Just as a tree grows slowly in the dark soil of Earth, Mars turns slowly in the dark sea of space, its roots invisible, its crown always bathed in the faint touch of the sun. From here, reflection softens even further. Mars is not a test of endurance, but a mirror of continuity, not a challenge, but a sign of the gentle order that pervades the solar system. Each orbit is a circle that closes without end, each turn another reminder that existence is not a line to finish, but a cycle to breathe within. The red planet with its steady course joins Earth, Venus, Jupiter, and all the others in the slow dance around the sun, and together they weave a harmony that never breaks. And so, to rest with this thought is to rest with the cosmos itself. Mars turns, the sun burns, the night stretches across the sky. Nothing hurries, nothing demands. There is only the great silence, the endless breathing of the universe, and within it, the quiet reassurance that Mars will always be there, turning softly, carrying its light across the darkness, patient as time, gentle as sleep. From the quiet certainty that Mars continues its orbit, thought drifts naturally toward the gaze that has so often followed it from Earth. For as long as there have been clear nights, eyes have lifted, searching for the faint red glow that lingers above the horizon, a glow that is neither loud nor bright, but steady enough to stir curiosity. In the stillness of deserts, on mountain tops, or across seas, generations have looked upward, finding Mars among the stars like a coal that never fades. The planet has become more than a light. It is a companion for dreamers, a reminder that beyond the limits of Earth, there is always another shore. This simple act of looking, repeated without haste over centuries, has been the first step in every journey, a journey that begins not with engines or machines, but with patience and wonder. From this patient wonder came the first fragile vessels, small machines launched gently into the night, carried by the quiet strength of rockets that left trails of fire only for a moment before fading into silence. These ships, delicate as seeds, carried by wind, have crossed the Gulf, with steady persistence drifting through months of emptiness to reach a world they could only touch for a brief while. Each probe, each lander, is like a message in a bottle set upon the sea of space. Some arrive, some fall, some are lost in the vastness, yet each one carries the same whisper that humanity longs to reach beyond itself. To picture these vessels is to imagine tiny lanterns set afloat, their light invisible to the eye, yet glowing softly in the mind, a testimony that the desire to know is as steady as the stars. The machines that survive the journey rest on the Martian soil with quiet humility. They do not speak loudly. They do not move with haste. They wait, they observe, they gather fragments of dust and light as if listening to the planet's long silence and sending back gentle echoes across the void. To Earth, these echoes arrive as faint signals, pulses of energy traveling through the dark, carrying stories. of valleys, wines, and skies touched by a pale sun. In this hush, technology becomes less a tool of conquest and more a bridge of listening. A rover's wheel is not a mark of dominance, but a soft step upon an untouched shore, as though dipping a hand into still water without disturbing its calm. Each photograph, each measurement is like a pebble picked up from a riverbed, simple and small, yet filled with meaning when held in the palm of memory. To think of this is to breathe more slowly, for it reminds the mind that reaching outward need not be urgent. The ships are small, their journeys long, their arrivals patient. They embody the truth that knowledge grows, not in leaps, but in quiet layers, like rings in a tree or ripples in a pond. Mars receives them without resistance, simply letting them rest as the sky lets birds pass or the sea lets driftwood float. Thus, the story of exploration becomes a gentle rhythm of looking, sending waiting and listening. Each cycle repeats, not hurried, not forced, but steady, echoing the orbit of Mars itself. Humanity continues to send its small ships, and Mars continues to circle the sun, and in this slow exchange lies a harmony, fragile but enduring, like two voices humming across a distance that neither fears nor shortens. To close the eyes with this thought is to feel both the distance and the closeness, the distance of millions of kilometers, and the closeness of knowing that across that gulf, a message has been sent, received, and returned. It is a reminder that curiosity is not a storm, but a tide, moving slowly, shaping shores over ages, guided not by urgency, but by patience. And so, humanity still looks up, quietly, steadily, sending out its small ships like sighs into the dark, knowing that even if each one is fragile, the act itself is enduring. Mars waits, the sun burns, and between them, little vessels drift like seeds in the wind, carrying dreams as light as sleep, as soft as breath, as endless as time. From the quiet rhythm of small ships drifting outward, the thought turns gently to the dream that guides them, a dream older than any machine, older even than the names written in books. Mars has been imagined in stories drawn in maps of the mind, painted in colors of rust and fire, always distant, always mysterious. Yet though it remains beyond the reach of footsteps, it does not vanish, for dreams do not dissolve in silence. They rest like seeds, waiting for a season not yet come. In the stillness of night, when Earth itself seems to breathe slowly under its blanket of stars, the dream of Mars rises like a faint echo within countless hearts. It is not an urgent call, not a shout that demands action, but a murmur that lingers as though reminding humanity that beyond the horizon lies another shore. This murmur is patient as the orbit of planets, repeating not with haste, but with certainty. The dream, though unfulfilled, continues to shape thought and imagination. It lives in the designs of ships, in the quiet calculations of scientists, in the whispered hopes of those who look at the sky before sleep. Even when attempts falter, when vessels fail, the dream does not collapse. Instead, it flows onward, changing shape, softening, finding new paths, as a river does when it meets stone. There is a gentleness in such persistence, for it shows that longing does not need triumph to survive. A dream can exist in waiting and watching, in imagining, and still be real. To think of Mars is to hold in the mind a vision both sharp and blurred, sharp enough to inspire, blurred enough to remain open, a horizon that is never closed. At times the distance may feel endless, like a road through a desert without end. Yet even there, the image of an oasis sustains the traveler, and so too does Mars sustain the imagination, not as a promise that must be fulfilled now, but as a reminder that hope is not measured in urgency. It breathes slowly, like sleep, like tides, like the orbit of worlds that circle their suns for eons without change. Thus, the dream becomes not a single goal, but a quiet companion to humanity's wider journey. It rests beside thoughts of the sea, the sky, the stars, reminding each generation that there are places yet unseen, and that the act of imagining them is itself a step into the unknown. In this way, Mars is already close, not in distance, but in presence, like a thought that lingers even when the room is silent. To close one's eyes and picture, it is to feel how the mind itself becomes a vessel floating outward without need for metal or fire. The dream travels in this manner, weightless, invisible, unbound by engines reaching Mars, not in body, but in spirit. And though it may not yet plant its roots upon the soil, it has already taken root in the quiet fields of thought, where no distance can uproot it. From here, the dream does not end. It waits patient as frost upon a window, patient as dawn that follows night. It does not fade, because it is not bound to achievement alone. It belongs to the rhythm of longing, which is as steady as breath, as continuous as the pulse of stars. And so, the dream of Mars remains ungrasped, yet unbroken, distant, yet present. It hovers softly above the horizon of time like a moon that never sets, like a light that flickers but does not go dark. To think of it is to feel the calm weight of possibility, gentle enough to soothe, steady enough to endure. Mars turns Earth, turns, and in between them, the dream drifts, not vanishing, not urgent, simply there. A quiet presence as endless as the sky, as patient as sleep. Like a veil that softens every sound, the stillness of the universe stretches gently over all attempts, wrapping them, not in judgment, but in calm. No matter how far ships travel, no matter how carefully plans are drawn, each motion dissolves into the vast quiet that has no edge, no center, no haste. It is as though every effort becomes a single ripple upon an endless sea, spreading slowly until it fades into silence. The silence is not absence, but presence. It breathes softly between the stars. It lingers across the void. It hums within the spaces where nothing else moves. To listen for it is to feel the weight of infinity, not as burden, but as a blanket that steadies restless thought. It is a silence older than stone, older than oceans, patient as the orbit of planets, patient as the slow turning of galaxies. Within this silence, human attempts appear delicate, almost fragile, like lanterns set afloat upon a dark river. Each launch, each probe, each step into the unknown glows for a moment, carrying with it the warmth of hope and the light of curiosity. Yet the river is vast, the night immeasurable, and the lantern drifts without stirring the great expanse around it. The silence does not resist, nor does it yield. It simply holds everything within its embrace. To reflect on this is to see how smallness need not be despair, for in the quiet scale of the universe, even the tiniest gesture endures, not because it changes the whole, but because it joins the rhythm of all that is. A ship crossing the void, a signal echoing outward, a dream whispered into plans. All of these rest within the silence, and the silence accepts them without measure. Thus, every effort, whether it succeeds or falters, finds its place in the stillness. A mission lost becomes not a tragedy, but a note fading into a wider song. A mission fulfilled becomes not a conquest, but a candle that glows for a while before its light blends with the stars. The universe is not altered by these things, yet the heart is, and that is enough. In this way, the silence teaches without words. It shows that striving is part of being, but that striving is not all. What endures is not only the reaching, but the rhythm of existing within a space so vast it cannot be crossed. To breathe within this truth is to understand patience, to feel how each moment is already whole, already complete. Even as scientists and dreamers design new paths, the stillness remains. It is not hurried by invention, nor shaken by ambition. It flows on steady as tides that rise and fall without end, steady as the darkness that enfolds stars without dimming their glow. Every effort is small against it, yet every effort is also safe within it, for nothing can escape the embrace of silence. This silence does not erase, it holds. It keeps the memory of ships that fell quiet, of signals that no longer return, of hopes that once rose like sparks. Nothing is truly gone, for within the stillness, all traces linger, softened, dissolved, folded into the wider calm. It is a silence that does not end, a stillness that breathes with every turning world. And so, when one thinks of human efforts reaching toward Mars, it is not with the urgency of conquest, but with the gentleness of continuity. Each step is small, yet each step is part of the wider stillness, moving not apart from it, but within it. The dream does not fight the silence, it drifts inside it, carried like a leaf upon a slow-moving stream. The stillness of the universe envelops every effort, making them both fragile and eternal. Fragile because they do not break the quiet, eternal because they are never truly lost. They are absorbed into the hush, like breath into sleep, like light into dusk. In this way, the universe does not resist human attempts, nor does it rush them forward. It simply waits silent and patient, holding all in its embrace. And within that embrace, effort and dream alike become part of a larger rhythm, as soft and endless as the turning of stars. The red planet drifts on steady in its path, circling the sun with quiet patience. It does not hurry, it does not turn away, it simply follows its orbit, as it has for ages, a soft ember glowing against the wide dark. To watch it is to feel time stretch, not rushing forward, but breathing slowly, evenly, like the rise and fall of a chest in sleep. Mars does not vanish when eyes close, nor does it fade when voices fall silent. It remains distant, yet constant, a reminder that some dreams are not lost when left unfinished, but simply waiting folded gently into tomorrow. The planet does not demand, it does not call with urgency. It only lingers calm, as a star patient as the night itself. And so thought drifts into rest, carried by the hush of that waiting. Mars is there quiet and unchanging, like a cradle set far across the sea, rocking in rhythm with the cosmos. Not gone, not unreachable, only waiting, as though whispering a lullaby across the void. A lullaby that tells the heart there is no need to rush, the dream is already safe, and the planet will still be there when morning comes.